that there's a launch of the 24-hour economy. We insist that as the people's representatives, this is the place for scrutiny of the so-called 24-hour economy. Then there a Ejumawura program. They also launched it April 2028, 2025. The aim to create youth entrepreneurship support targeting at least 10,000 new youth-led firms each year. How are they going to go about this? What are the benchmarks? We don't know. Parliament, again, is in the dark. The National Apprenticeship Program is also one thing they launched July 29, 2025, starting with 10,000 apprentices and scaling to 100,000 in 2026. Again, Parliament has been kept in the dark. Not even the Committee on Youth and Sports has been updated on this. There's nothing. There is no ministerial update of this program on the House floor, of course. Getting to the dispatch box to would bring this. We can forgive them on the labor export initiative. That was done when Parliament was on break. So again, we pray that this labor export initiative will find space in Parliament. Now, on the governance front, this is what we've observed as minority. Yesterday, we had the majority leader. He dealt with some figures, but he didn't deal with them holistically. Our job is to look at it holistically. So this is what the data says, holistically. Recent data from Global Info Analytics comparing the July and September 2025 surveys shows a clear dip, emphasis, a clear dip in public confidence in governance direction and performance. So in July 2025, the records had it that 71% of Ghanaians believed in the country heading towards a right direction, as the majority leader said. But by September, that optimism had fallen to 66%. So a 5% decline. Similarly, the share of those who felt the country was moving in the wrong direction rose from 20% to 23%, indicating growing unease about the country's policy trajectory. So whereas the majority leader focused on the July figures and perhaps did not want to delve into the September figures, we, the minority, have looked at it holistically, done a comprehensive, outlook, July and September. So you don't go to July and forget about the present. And then the Mr. President job approval rating, yes, he was right, it was 73%, but that's all, that was in July. As we speak, it has dipped. The disapproval rating has climbed to 22%. So we are looking at a 6% drop, which is huge, within just 3 months. When Ghanaians were asked about government performance, the percentage of respondents who described it as very good or good had declined from 61% in July to 54% in September, while those who viewed it as poor or very poor increased from 10% to 16%. The consistent downward movement within just 2 to 3 months shows that Ghanaians are beginning to lose confidence in the government's handling of national affairs. The optimism that greeted the administration's early months is fading, replaced by growing skepticism about its ability to deliver on its promises. And these are the issues. One, the COVID-19 levy. They pledged that COVID-19 health recovery levy in its next budget is, yet the tax remains in force pending passage of a VAT amendment. Who does that? Who does that? They spoke about it in opposition. You come into government and you're failing to do that. And let's not forget, when they said the e-levy was not good and they were scrapping the e-levy, they introduced a D-levy, the Dumso levy. They tried to suspend it, claiming that they were going to consult civil society. But they have since implemented it. And in fact, they have increased utility tariffs twice this year alone, in excess of 5%, 14%, 14%. So you say you are taking e-levy out of the economy because it was a nuisance tax. But in its place, you have burdened Ghanaians with utility tariffs, especially electricity, going as much as 14%. So it clearly reflects what Ghanaians are seeing. Is it a matrical agenda, or, however you may want to describe it? But the reality is that Ghanaians are losing confidence in the government. Then the road contractors' arrears. They are dealing with only 4 billion out of the planned 13 billion. What is happening? They promised that they were going to pay 13 billion. That was contained in the media review. But they are only paid 4 billion. Many of the roads that contractors were on, they've abandoned the site. So we ask, when are they going to deal with it? Then let us deal with the cost of living pressures. Whereas they would say that inflation has eased, we would want to look at the realities on the market. The recent SHS students who are going, parents are complaining because they have to buy everything. Everything. So it really negates the import of the free SHS. And even how students were placed. If somebody is in Winneba, and then you place the person in Koforidua, or the person is going to Boko, from Winneba to Boko, what is the gain? There's no value in free SHS. So the free SHS placement system that has crashed must be looked at, because it was not the case in the past, and we challenge them. The placement now is so burdensome, where parents complain to the media. It's not the minority that is saying so. Parents have had to complain about how their children were placed. So crucially, we cannot say that the inflation has helped to stabilize prices. No, that is not the case. And then if you monitor the opportunity for jobs, we really getting nothing. We have not seen any serious job creation effort. For the private sector, for instance, they came to cancel the 1D, 1F. They say they don't need a 1D, 1F. But the 1D, 1F was a major boost for the private sector. We, MPP, are a center-right ideologists. We believe in the private sector. The private market creates opportunity for the industry to grow so that they can employ more. They are social democrat, center-left. We don't know what they intend to plan. But we cannot say that they have shown seriousness in terms of job creation for the private sector. That is why the Ghana Statistical Service report that youth unemployment is averaging 32% for the age bracket 15 to 24%. High joblessness amidst rising living costs reflect a shortfall in translating the macroeconomic gains to household welfare. Now let's come to the health sector. health sector workers have been complaining. We know that over 200 junior doctors who are worked for 10 months without salaries and more than 800 who qualify as medical doctors still await posting. In October, we know that Junior Doctors Association threatened a nationwide strike, withdrawing outpatient and emergency services to protest these delays. Similarly, we know the nurses and midwives have also protested 8 to 10 months of salary arrest, forcing management promises by revealing poor workforce financing. Again, this cannot be said that a reset government that is making things anew, is doing to help revamp the economy. If you forget about critical sectors of the economy, your frontline workers, definitely it demonstrates some lack of priority on your part as a government. Education, the workforce there. Many of our qualified teachers complain that the sector has not been able to place them, or even those who were placed have not been paid. The unresolved service conditions has also led to labor unrest. Newly posted teachers have gone 8 months plus without salaries. We have also not seen any infrastructure improvement, any facelift. Government has not, since January, they brought a budget. The sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. From day one, we expect them to come prepared. We have not seen any effort in terms of data regarding infrastructure facelifts, dormitory, classroom construction, and the GET fund. There is no document before Parliament telling us what GET fund is doing. So far, nothing. If there is any such thing, we challenge them. We are ready for them. So we would stay here for now, and then I'm sure after the majority leader has made known his remarks, we will deal with the other sectors as and when your questions come up. Thank you so much indeed, and God bless you for your attention.
Before we take the address of the leader of government business, let me acknowledge the deputy minority leader and honorable member for Asuka constituency, Madam Patricia Apieje. And for the records, the second deputy minority whip and MP for Wijagbari is Honorable Jerry Ahmed Shaibu. Over to you, leader.
Good morning to you all. Let me welcome all of you back to this meeting of Parliament. I know it has been a long one. The recess has been long, and I believe you missed this house for a while. The opportunity to meet colleagues, fraternize with parliamentarians, get information from the proceedings of the House, and feed your media houses with content has been lacking for a couple of months now. We're back and ready to start work, and you being the platform on which the work that we do gets conveyed to the Ghanaian populace and Ghanaians abroad and international community as a whole, we need to welcome each other back and plan together how we intend to work during this meeting of Parliament, and also to share with you briefly what might be the agenda of the House going forward. So you're welcome, and I look forward to us having a very engaging meeting. As indicated in the speech of the clerk, our expectation of you is that you will convey accurately exactly what is happening in the House to the population. And I think you should go beyond that. When I say you should go beyond that, as a political platform, we have a penchant for continuously misrepresenting facts in a way just to portray what serves our political interests. I remember during the electioneering campaign in the US, I follow their politics quite a lot. I'm always watching them on CNN. There was so much misrepresentation of what was happening to a point where CNN had to employ somebody for doing a fact check. And I noticed that either Joy FM or City FM, Joy FM, also adopted that strategy. So I urge you, given the level of dishonesty and misrepresentation that sometimes I see in our politics, I expect you not just to convey what has been said, but also to build your own capacity to do fact-checking so that when you are conveying, you can also correct the facts. That is what I hope to see during this meeting of Parliament. As a democracy, we must keep improving on our performance. As the fourth arm of government, the media must also improve its performance. What is its main task? Its main task is to convey accurate information to the populace. And so doing fact-checking is so critical. So when the minority leader speaks, by the time he finishes, when you are reporting, you should be correcting the inaccuracies in what he has said. Okay? So for instance, when he says that no policy document has come to Parliament, you are supposed to report that that is not accurate, because everything that he said was captured in the economic policy document that the finance minister presented to Parliament. And on the basis of the economic policy document and the various sectoral policies that they were introducing, he then presented an estimate of how much money is needed to implement those policies. And he had, at that time, 88 members in the chamber, and they debated the economic policy document sector by sector. Then they are members of the various committees, and all those committees took the sector by sector policy documents, analyzed them at committee retreats, invited all the agencies, and the agencies appeared before them and explained each and every one of those policy measures. A lot of these policy measures were already captured in our national campaign manifesto, if you recall. And you journalists quizzed us, we explained and explained those policy measures in the national campaign that took place in December 2024. Then our first budget came, and in the budget policy document, we captured the same policies. And then we budgeted for it. We brought it to this House. His members had the opportunity to scrutinize the policy document, debated it, and we all approved the policy documents in the chamber. Then the figures, the estimates for implementing those policies were brought to us. We debated the estimates again and approved them. So I'm surprised that this morning he will come and say that no policy document on any of those programs have been brought to Parliament. So fact check one, what you have said is not true. Then let me also indicate that I'll be surprised that as a former majority leader and leader of government business, you will say that the ministers have failed to come and tell us anything about those programs and policies. Because the tools for getting them to come and brief you on the policies are in your hands. If you have forgotten what the NDC promised in its manifesto, and if you have forgotten what is in the economic policy that you yourself approved, and you want to be reminded, you can ask a minister a question. So the tool of asking questions is for you to bring ministers to the floor of the House to brief you. Because you cannot also say that as a politician, as an opposition, it is only when facts are stated in the House that you take them as an indication of government policy or program. You admit that each and every one of those policies and programs have been launched. At the launch events, the policies are described, the programs are described, you journalists cover the events, and you broadcast it. And so I will be surprised if you say that the ministers have not come to Parliament to come and brief you, so you don't know what is happening. You should be reading newspapers. You should be reading the internet. You should be reading the news portals of the various media houses that are covering those events. They are all platforms for monitoring policy and policy implementation. The info analytics that you have cited here, did he come to brief you in Parliament? The man didn't come to brief you in Parliament. But you've gone to dig it out, you've gotten that information, and you are here relying heavily on that information. So how come that you don't want to rely on the information of all the media houses who covered Ejumawura, who covered all these other, programs, the Big Push, the Coders program, the apprenticeship training program, all these were launched. They were covered extensively by media houses. They were reported. So if you can sift through media reports to see the reports of info analytics, sift through the same media reports, and you'll find all the reports on all these programs that were launched. Let me also indicate that we are not claiming that in less than 360 days, every single mess that we inherited will be corrected. We're not saying that. If nurses who have been trained have not yet been placed, it doesn't take 360 days to place all nurses that have been trained. It doesn't take 360 days to place all teachers that have been trained, because you know that the structure of the economy was devastated by the level of mismanagement that we saw, which informed the elections. Ghanaians themselves saw it. That's the basis for the vote and the margin of victory that the NDC enjoyed in the last election. Ghanaians themselves saw the level of devastation of the economy. And we know that it will take a long time to fix it. But the evidence, as testified by everybody that I quoted yesterday, from the IMF to the World Bank, to the African Development Bank, to Ghanaian economists, to everybody, the evidence is clear that this government is making a lot of effort to fix the economy, stabilize the city, pay our debts, manage our expenditure, and then bring us to a level where the economy can be on a sound footing for the private sector to be able to create the jobs. When you talk about job creation and you say you are center right, center left, and etc., all those ideologies now agree that you need a strong, vibrant private sector to create jobs, because all of them have evolved to a point where they accept that the state has some limitations in its capacity to create jobs itself. Because in the end, you will just create a huge, unaffordable bureaucracy, and you cannot sustain it budget-wise. So you need a vibrant private sector. How can you claim that you are committed to a vibrant private sector when interest rates in the banks are hovering around 50%, 30%, 40%? Which private sector can survive borrowing at 50%, 40%, 30%? Which private sector? No private sector will survive borrowing at that level. What is going to happen is that they will become uncompetitive, and all of them will become importers of finished goods. None of them will produce locally, because you can't borrow at 30, 40, 50%, and then produce and compete with Chinese firms that are borrowing at 3, 4%. If you recall, in 2024, there was a huge issue between Ghanaian traders and Nigerian traders. You are all here, you remember? It's a huge battle. Why were Nigerian traders here? Why should we accept Nigerian traders? And Nigerian traders were undercutting us. They were selling lower than the prices that Ghanaian traders were selling. The answer is simple. They were borrowing at a lower rate in Nigeria. So when they came to Ghana, they could easily reduce their prices, whereas the Ghanaian traders were borrowing at a very high interest rate. So when they went to China to buy the goods and came, they could not compete with the Nigerian traders. Very simple economics. Very, very simple, basic, secondary school economics. So there's no way you can profess to be a strong advocate of private sector when you have such an abnormal interest rate. So the task of this government has been, one, bring the interest rate down. How do you bring the interest rate down? Stop borrowing from the banks as a government. If you cut down how much government is borrowing from the banks will be forced to look for a private sector to lend from them. And in trying to look for private sector to lend from them, they will be forced to bring down their interest rates. And that is what we have done so well, that interest rates have come down drastically within a very short period of time. The same, inflation. If the public does not have the capacity, the purchasing power, how are they going to patronize the goods of the private sector? They will produce, but the people cannot patronize. So there will be no market. So you have to drive down inflation. How are we going to bring down prices if the exchange rate is so high? Private sector people are going to produce something, and then they need so much money to exchange into dollars to go and import the inputs, the raw materials for production. So anybody who understands basic economics knows that the best incentive for the private sector to thrive and do well is maintaining a decent microeconomic framework. And that is the work that we have done. And that is why I was boasting on the floor of the House that if you look at the indicators, we are doing well. Our inflation has come down to single digit. Lending rates have come down in the private banks. The exchange rate has come down drastically. And so private sector has an opportunity to now go to the commercial banks and then lend and invest and do business and create jobs for everybody. Let me assure you that it is not the idea of government to take public money and invest in something called 24-hour economy. No. No. So if you are waiting for us to bring you a document in Parliament say we are taking so much money to invest in 24-hour economy, you won't see it. The whole idea behind the 24-hour economy is create the enabling environment for the private sector to be confident to invest and run the economy 24 hours. And so you are looking at an entire value chain from the issue of land. How do you access lands for, let's say, large-scale commercial agriculture? From the issue of how do you build the infrastructure for irrigation, for large-scale commercial agriculture? How do you ensure that there are roads leading to the farms? Many of these things are matters that the state should allow the private sector to do, except that we should give them the necessary incentives. You said that you were doing one district, one factory. I beg you, you are a journalist. You've been in this country for the past 8 years. Show me how many of the so-called new factories were functional as at December 7, 2024, when you were living, when we had the, January 7, 2025, when you were leaving office. How many of those factories? Because it was more of a political slogan than real sound policy. No new factories were ever functional as of January 7, 2025. In the end, what did we see? We saw you going to existing factories and getting them to come and apply. And then, based on whatever consideration, you selected some of the existing factories and then gave them huge tax exemptions, claiming that they were going to expand operations to create jobs. We are going to call for an audit of the monies that they gained by the tax exemptions and to see if indeed those monies went into expanding their operations in the first place. But that was not even the original idea. The original idea and the policy framework is that you establish one district, one factory in every district, so that industrialization will go across the country. You did not take time to establish the raw material base for the factories. So many factory structures were constructed, but could not be functional because they didn't even have the raw material base. So if I challenge you to actually show how many jobs were created, beyond the actual job of constructing them, how many jobs were created in actually running factories, you just won't be able to produce any significant figures. Those are the facts, and you all live in this country, and you live in those districts. So I plead with you that if I were you, I would stay far away from trying to tout an MPP record, because that record was decided upon by Ghanaians in the last election. Let me talk about COVID-19 levy. Indeed, as you know, we don't run the country alone. We run the country sometimes in consultation with, let's say, the World Bank, the IMF, because you've gone to sign commitments with them. You signed the commitments with them. You went to the IMF, sought support, and they agreed to give you the support based on conditions. Condition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you know very well that COVID-19 was one of the conditions. You know very well. And you know very well that you can't just get up one early morning and take out everything without serious engagement and without showing how you're going to deal with the shortfall that will result from taking out that one. And if you recall, we said we're taking out e-levy, we're taking out COVID-19 and several other taxes, the tax on betting and all those things. Those were going to have fiscal implications. And so when the analysis was done, we pushed and insisted, but in the end, it became obvious to us that we could take out all these other ones, but then for COVID-19, we needed to engage a little further. Subsequently, the finance minister indicated his readiness to take even that one out. So I'm not sure it's something that we should debate so much here. I do agree with you that the free SHS continues to be challenged, but as you can see, even there, we are making sure that it works. It works because it needs financing. And the NPP government had capped the Get Fund levy. Because you capped the Get Fund levy and took the money to other sectors, what happened was that SHS was not properly financed. It was not properly financed under the NPP. And you know that as a fact. You were in this country when schools couldn't reopen because the feeding grants did not go. You were here. You were in this country. So we uncapped it, and because we have uncapped it, Get Fund money is fully funding free SHS. When you say parents had to buy everything, which year in this country has it not been the case that when schools reopen for the first time and children have to go, that their parents have to buy chop boxes for them? Did we ever promise free chop boxes? Did anybody in this country hear anyone promise free chop boxes? Did anybody in this country hear anybody promise free spoons and cups and plates to carry to school in order to eat? Nobody ever promised anything like that. So when schools reopen and your parents have to buy their chop boxes, have to buy their spoons and cups and etc., how does that become an indication of a non-performing government? This has always been the practice under the MPP. When school reopened for the first time and children were admitted to school and they were going to school, their parents bought all those things as well. What we promise as free SHS is feeding, accommodation, teachers, textbooks. Those are the things we promise as free SHS. If I'm lying, anybody can raise their hands and say, no, those are not the things that you promise. Accommodation is free. Teachers are being paid. Feeding is available. No child has stayed at home because school grants haven't gone to schools. So free SHS is working. And that's why yesterday I said, yes, it may have been started by the NPP, but we in the NDC have shown that we are better implementers of a social intervention policies. Same with health insurance. You capped health insurance. If you thought health insurance was so important, why did you get Ghanaians to pass a law to raise funds for health insurance only for you to go and cap that money so that you can divert that money to other sectors in the name of dealing with rigidities, that there are fiscal rigidities and that the various statutory funds, are taking all the money and you can't do other initiatives for government because there are constraints in terms of financing. So you capped health insurance. You capped, Get Fund. We came and we uncapped them. And look at the amounts of monies that are going to fund healthcare delivery and the amount are going to fund free senior high schools. So I will insist that even if NPP started free SHS, I am saying that today NDC is a better implementer of free SHS. Even if National Health Insurance, as it is presently constituted, was started by President Kufuor, I am saying that today, as it is being implemented, NDC is a better implementer of National Health Insurance than MPP ever did. And the figures are showing, the statistics are showing, and there is more confidence in healthcare delivery now, more confidence in education service delivery now, because we are making sure that the funding is going to those sectors. I agree that we need to create more jobs. I agree, and if you listened to me yesterday, I was very, very candid on that the youth need more jobs. But jobs can only be created on the footing of a sound economic framework. And that has to happen first before the private sector can be enabled to create the jobs. And again, and I have to be very frank with fellow Ghanaians, that the conviction or belief or expectation that the state institutions should be overbloated so that jobs will be created is counterproductive. Because if Ghana Gas, which infrastructure was run with 120 workers, you go and employ 1,000 workers, as happened, under the NPP. And the statistics are there. If he's challenging, we can summon the CEO to come and give us the statistics. When we constructed the gas plant, only 120 workers were there managing the same gas plant. When we came back to office January this year and we took over the plant, we saw that the same plant that we had 120 workers managing is now being managed by over 1,000 workers. Now, how can that state institution be profitable? There's no way it can be profitable. Because every money that they make, they'll have to use it to pay for labor. And so because it's not profitable, it cannot expand. If it were profitable, if it were run efficiently, so that they are managing it with 120 workers, they are making a lot of profits. By now, they could have used their earnings to establish a second gas plant and employ another 120, a third gas plant to employ another 120, and the challenges that we are having in the energy sector, we will not have to face those challenges. The reason why we are paying huge utility tariffs, and he mentioned it, so I'll just segue into that. The reason why we are paying huge utility tariffs is because we are using liquefied petroleum products, that is, diesel and coal, to power our generators. And because diesel is expensive, if a power producer uses diesel to power his plant, he has to charge you, the consumer, the cost of the diesel. And if he uses gas to power his plant, his cost can go down, I'm told, by over 70%. Over 70%, I'm told. So the strategy of this government to be able to deal with the cost is to shift our power plants from those diesel products to gas, so that we can be able to drive down the cost of generation, and then we pass on the benefits of the reduced cost to the consumers, which is citizens for domestic use and industry, to power industry, so that Ghana can be competitive to be able to generate the jobs. If a factory is taking a decision between either siting in China or Ghana, one of the major conditions that they are asking for is energy cost affordable in Ghana? Is electricity affordable in Ghana? If electricity is not affordable in Ghana, they will not position the factory in Ghana, because if they site the factory in Ghana, they are going to be producing at a very high cost. But if they site it in China, they will produce at a very low cost, and even with haulage to Ghana, they will still be very, very competitive against a factory that has chosen to site its operation in Ghana. So if you don't reduce energy cost to a certain level, the private sector will just not be able to perform. About 3 weeks ago, the private sector organized a conference, a press, I'm sure many of you covered it, at which they raised the issue of energy cost and said that unless energy cost goes down, it will be difficult for them to survive. So that's the matter that, as a government, we are focused on. And in addition, you left us with a huge unreasonable debt at ECG. ECG, you were board chairman. You were board chairman. You know how much debt you left. You yourself have admitted it on the floor during debates. about how bad the situation at ECG was when you assumed leadership there as board chairman, and efforts that you also tried to make to address that situation. At the time you were leaving office, you hadn't fixed it. The debts are still lying there. Who's going to pay for those debts? Who is going to pay for those debts? You stopped them in 2024. You stopped PURC from adjusting tariffs because you are afraid of its implications on you for elections. The records are there. You stopped them. He is not denying it. You stopped them from adjusting tariffs in 2024 because you were afraid of the implications on your electoral fortunes if they adjusted tariffs. So the debt kept mounting. Because if you are producing at a very high cost, and then government is forced, ECG is supposed to take it at that high cost, and the ECG doesn't adjust the tariff to reflect the cost at which they are taking the commodity, and yet they are supposed to sell it to consumers at a very low cost. Who is going to pay the differential between how much they are buying and how much they are selling it to consumers? That is normally done through gradual, tariff adjustments. And you stop them from adjusting the tariffs. So the debt just kept ballooning to very, very unreasonable levels. Billions and billions of Ghana cedis of debt at ECG. That has to be addressed. But for the engineering that we have done to make sure that lights never go off so that they can always afford diesel to run the power plants for us to have 24-hour, electricity. It would have been very difficult. But even as you do that, you must work towards a sustainable arrangement. And one of it is that you must be realistic in terms of the adjustment of tariffs. In addition, you must deal with the inefficiencies and the corruption. The corruption. I'm told that as ECG, they've procured things that they need in the next 4 or 5 years. You procure for just a year, and then the next year you procure, and the next year you procure. Why do you go and procure things that you need for 5 years? Some of them, their lifespans don't even go up to 5 years. So they will get destroyed in the process, and that will be causing financial loss to the state. So we are fixing the corruption and the mess there. We are fixing the inefficiencies. We are cutting down on the wastage, and we are trying to make ECG very, very profitable, ECG and NEDCO. And go and see what is happening there. It is now working well. But it takes time to deal with the legacy debts. And Ghanaians need to support us to deal with those issues. At the same time, you must have a long-term strategy to drive down power production cost. So the president and government have decided to increase our gas production capacity. So a new gas processing plant is going to be constructed so that we can have additional gas to be able to power all the gas plants with power plants with gas, so that production costs will come down drastically and we can sell power much, much cheaper to both household consumers and for industrial use. In the meantime, government has also decided that we are going to look at the distribution challenges, because there's so much infrastructure challenge that is causing a lot of wastage in the distribution. So if you buy 10 megawatts of power as ECG from a power producer, because your infrastructure is inefficient, by the time it gets to the consumers, let's say 2% of it has been leaked through inefficiencies. So you need to fix the distribution infrastructure. So when you buy 100%, by the time it gets to the consumers, even if there is some waste, maybe some 0.something%, leakage and waste, then the full amount, close to the full quantity of what you have purchased actually gets to the consumers. Second thing is inefficiency in the collection of revenues. And so government has also decided that we are introducing private sector participation in the distribution and the collection of the electricity tariffs. And so when we do that, look, the global best practice is that utilities are able to recover 98% of their revenues. That's a global best practice. In Ghana, ECG was collecting only 85%. 85%. But the global best practice standards is 98%. So the difference between the 98% and 85% was actually loss occasioned in the distribution and the revenue collection. So we want to bring in private sector participation. There was an initial idea, PDS was a model for bringing in private sector participation, but thanks to the character of those who were introducing it, it got botched because of the manner in which the attempt to introduce it went. So those are the issues. I do agree with you that so far the macroeconomic indicator stabilization has not fully translated, is that okay, into job creation. But again, that is a function of confidence. The private sector needs to see you sustain it for them to be confident to now make the investments in expanding their factories and their industries. And 9 months is not enough to sustain, to build confidence in the system that you have built so that they can say, okay, I think the dollar will remain where it is. So let me go and borrow and establish a new factory. I think interest rates will remain where it is. So let me go and borrow and then establish a factory. Or I think inflation will remain where it is. And so purchasing power of consumers will stay the same. It takes time to build that confidence. So even though we've brought down the indicators, because it takes time to build confidence in private sector for them to actually invest, to expand and create jobs, that has not yet happened. But if we stay the course and confidence is built, you will see people, one after the other, beginning to make the necessary investments to do the expansions that will create the jobs in the private sector. So I agree with you, but that is something that will follow when we stay the course and we build the confidence. So I didn't think this briefing was going to be about economic performance and etc. and a banter between both sides. I thought it was more of a briefing to discuss the program of Parliament for this meeting. But the way you started turned it into a debate about the records of the two governments. And so I was forced to respond. Otherwise, I didn't want us to go in that direction. I think that we're just meeting our in-house media partners and then to brief them on the program and agenda of the session. And then we will... Oh, why are you laughing? I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go there. No, as you see, I don't have a speech responding to him. But we are covered live, isn't it? So if he says things and I don't respond, it may seem that what he has said is true. So if you say it, I'll be forced to respond. But my real agenda coming here, really, was to discuss this, which is just the agenda for the session. I had no speech on the economy or, info analytics and etc. What he failed to achieve in the chamber yesterday, he thought he could use this platform to achieve it. That's what he's trying to do. He's my brother. We know each other very well. In spite of all the things that you see, we are very, very good friends. So, and I know him. I knew he was going to do that. Because after the program, he told me, hey, is that what you did to me? Tomorrow, I'll also do it to you. So I'm not surprised that he's doing it. So, no. We have a very healthy democracy. Ghana has a very, very healthy democracy. Other countries get shocked when they come and see how, as politicians, we relate to each other. Because in other jurisdictions, the politicians just don't relate at all. But here, we relate nicely. We try to argue on points. We may say all the things that we're saying here, but when we walk out there, we start discussing our personal issues, we are friends, we are working. And we try to encourage that among the citizenry also, that let it just remain at the level of discourse about who is doing better, but don't translate it into violence, is that okay? And other tendencies that will destroy our society. That's why once in a while you see in Ghana, the chief imam will go to the Catholic Church and meet the bishops, because we want both religions to see that we just have difference in how we all want to go to paradise, even though we all don't want to die. But we are not enemies. The fact that you choose to believe in this doesn't mean that, you are my enemy. So the leaders keep engaging publicly to send that signal that we are not enemies. That's why at functions you see President Mahama will go and greet former President Akufo-Addo. They engage so that the support base will see that, after all, they are not really enemies. It's just that they have different views about how to run the economy or how to run the country. So I welcome that. And I am committed to also sustaining the quality of our democracy. But yesterday, I did give indications as to the agenda of this meeting of Parliament, so I'm not going to repeat it. If you have any questions, you can ask. But basically, this is a budget meeting. And those of you who have been in this house for very long, you know what a budget meeting is. It is the meeting at which the budget is presented to the House. And so we will wait for the finance minister to give an indication when he will be ready to present the budget. As it is now, they have been holding budget hearings. The various ministries, agencies, departments, constitutional bodies, they've all been going to the Ministry of Finance for budget hearings, where they normally give them a ceiling. They come to justify why the ceiling should move from there to a different position, and how much more they need and all that. And then once he synthesizes what everybody needs and what he can give, then he's able to put together a budget that covers everybody and brings it to this House for us to deliberate on and approve. So it won't be any different. It will be the same thing that we've done over and over for the past 3 decades. So nothing exceptional in terms of procedure. But of course, in terms of content, it is only the finance minister who will be able to tell us what the content of the budget is. So being a budget period, you as journalists, you know what to do. When the budget is being presented, you know what to do. When it's referred to committees, you know what to do. Committees are reporting, you know what to do, and etc. So it's the same thing. In addition, the normal private business of members of parliament, which is questions to ministers about policies and programs, all the issues that he has raised here, I hope he will just ask simple questions about them, and the ministers will come and answer those questions to him. The other thing also is, people ask all these questions about their constituencies and etc. Ministers will come and answer. And then the usual statements that parliamentarians will make on issues, their colleagues will debate them. Motions will be brought, and yesterday he drew attention to some motions that have been pending for a while now. We'll look at all of them. I plan to bring some motions to call for some hearings on job creation for the youth, because I consider it as a very, very important agenda that must be pursued by this House, which is to push the various institutions of state to try and then engage in policies, design and implement policies and practices that will create jobs. For instance, if you look at our extractive industry, it has turned out that we're exporting more gold from small-scale miners than even what the large-scale miners have been exporting. I'm sure it is not the first time this is happening. I'm sure it has always been the case, except that in the past, we haven't pursued policies that encourage the small scale to sell the gold to the state. So there was a lot of smuggling. I'm not saying smuggling has stopped, but there was a lot of smuggling of gold. Because even those days, if you recall, when you went to China, China will give you a different figure of gold imports from Ghana than Ghana will give of gold exports to China. whilst the Chinese system is able to actually detect gold sent to them, we couldn't detect how much gold was going out of our country. And so there was always disparity between what every country reported as the volume of gold imported from Ghana and what we reported as the volume of gold exported. And a lot of it was coming, a lot of the gold smuggled, a lot of it was coming from small-scale mining activities. But because we implemented a very innovative policy, which is the gold board policy, it encouraged the small-scale miners to now start owning up and then giving it to the state instead of giving it to smugglers. And so we're beginning to see that, so after all, our small-scale miners are producing more than our large-scale miners. Now, this calls for a rethink of our extractive industries. Should we be pursuing domestic ownership of the mining industry as against foreign ownership of the mining industry? Will we benefit more if we encourage locals to take control of the mining industry? If they have this capacity, how can we nurture the capacity so that everything is controlled by us instead of foreigners coming? And there's been a process that has led up to where today, even for the big foreign mining companies, they actually employ Ghanaians through contract mining. So the foreign companies will own the mine, but the actual mining activity, earth moving, excavation, haulage, this, that, are all done by Ghanaian firms. So can we move from, you made me speak 1 hour, 30 minutes. You raised so many issues, I needed to respond to those issues.
20 minutes to 1 hour, 40 minutes.
I didn't time you, because I believe in freedom of speech. So I allowed you to speak as much as you wanted to speak. And when you were satisfied, you stopped. And I'm now responding. Now you're worried about my responses.
No, your time.
Anyway, so basically, we will look at the extractive industries through a series of public hearings. We have a Supreme Court Chief Justice nominee, and so it is something that is going to occupy this House during this meeting. And I think also that there are a few private member bills that may come, and when they come, we'll take them. Government has a lot of business. The various legislation that I outlined yesterday on the floor of the House, many of them will come. Some of them are still going through the process of receiving cabinet approvals. Some have already received cabinet approvals. And so those that have already received cabinet approvals, we will work on them. Those that are yet to, we'll urge the ministers to expedite action on that and bring them. But this meeting is largely going to be dominated by the consideration of the 2026 budget. Let me conclude on the note that, as you can see, Parliament now has its own television station. A lot of work has gone into establishing that station with the support of GBC. And so we will continue to enhance the capacity of Parliament's TV so that we can run a very open Parliament. As of now, the system is able to support proceedings in the chamber. I think the Director of Broadcasting, yeah, you are here. We have plans to also install facilities in our committee rooms. This being a budget meeting, a lot of committee work will take place. So we want to install facilities in the committee rooms so that even at the committee stage, deliberations over sector policies and estimates can be covered live on television. If that had happened, he would not be saying today that he hasn't seen anything about our major flagship policies. Because if we were covering the proceedings at committee live, people would have called in to say, oh, but Osahin, I saw the youth committee discussing the apprenticeship program, and there was a presentation by National Youth Authority and everything on the details, and the committee reported on it. I saw it on television. So we want to run a very open parliament, very transparent governance system. And so we are going to improve the capacity of our committee rooms to record and transmit live the sittings of committees. So that way, you know, everything that we do, both chamber and committee work, will be covered live on national television. On that note, I will want to thank you, given that my partner is uncomfortable, my colleague is uncomfortable with how much time I'm spending. I have a lot to tell you, but he says that I'm talking too much. So I will stop at this level. I see he has been copiously writing. If you say, I will respond. So I'm just drawing your attention that if you say anything new, I will respond to whatever you have said. We can sit here till tomorrow. I will keep responding. So let's take a decision how we want to moderate this particular session. Thank you very much.
We will now move into the session that gives you the opportunity to pose questions to leadership. Please indicate your interest. When acknowledged, you introduce yourself and the media outlet that you represent. Please, let's be concise. We are live on Parliament TV, TV3, Channel 1, and on all Parliament social media platforms. Kweku.
Thank you. My name is Kweku Sechidanso. Majority Leader, I just want to find out from you, knowing that this meeting is a budget meeting and a very busy meeting, will there be an opportunity for the Human Sexual Rights and Family Value Bill? And with the revised the new standing orders now, will the committee meetings be open to the media, all the committee meetings be open to the media? And then Minority Leader, just to find out, as your the minority side have expressed reservation about the removal of the Chief Justice, would you participate in the work of the appointment committee, as the Speaker has made a referral to the appointment committee? Thank you.
Prince.
Thank you very much. My name is Prince Akwa, United Television, UTV in short. The first question goes to Minority Leader. Minority Leader, is it not too early to criticize this government over the youth calling for job? Because I remember in the previous administration, this NAPCO was beautifully launched, and just after 2 years, those youth were on the street demonstrating, calling for their salary. The youth in afforestation and then NAPCO, that is one. And then again, Majority Leader, when you were in opposition, you were too loud. You and one minister, I won't mention his name because he's not here. But it seems these days you've developed some defense mechanism. Whenever there's a hit on you, you try to go on personal. Is that what you describe as a beautiful democracy? Thank you.
We'll take the last one and give leadership